Apparently, Gallifreyan guards can regenerate. And I don't mean Time Lord guards, I mean Gallifreyan, pure blood Gallifreyan. Which, considering Time Lord as a rank, it makes sense why they gain that ability, so I'm guessing the reason why Gallifreyan guards have it is because, well, isn't a guard that can regenerate a bit more useful than one that dies after one shot? Does that mean if Susan became a guard, she would have got the ability to regenerate? And another thing, how come... sorry about that, got a bit off track. Anyway, The Infinity Doctors, made for the 35th anniversary of the series. Starring? I have no idea. It's never actually stated which Doctor stars in this book, but you can have a guess. Personally, I consider it an alternative Doctor, because, well, he knows about the Daleks, and he knows about Sontarans, but he's a teacher on Gallifrey, and he hasn't met certain enemies yet. The book itself is a rather interesting way to have an anniversary. It's more a celebration of the mythos than it is of the show itself. It's not a bad thing, it's just a point. Story. This may take a while. Set on Gallifrey, the Time Lords have noticed a strange anomaly on their sensors. The weirdest thing is, despite what it could do, it hasn't done anything yet. The universe is still fine. Naturally, the Time Lords are a bit worried about this anomaly. At the same time, the Doctor arranges a meeting between Sontar, the lead Sontaran, and the lead Rutan, who I shall call Bobby. He does this in order to finally bring peace between the two races. When talking to them doesn't go well, he locks them both in his TARDIS. Apparently no one can die in the TARDIS. At the same time of both of these things, there is a murderer on Gallifrey, taking out technicians. Turns out to be an insane Time Lord known as Savar, who lost his mind when he saw the Time Lord God. So we have a few plots to follow. No big deal, it's not over tedious. A tear in time and space in the shape of a spire, the Sontaran Rutan meetings, and the insane Time Lord. How is it? I'll be honest, I prefer the mystery of the Time Lords. My favourite depiction will always be the War Games, where they were these high-powered things that even the Doctor was scared of. Don't get me wrong, I enjoyed the Five Doctors and the Deadly Assassin, but my ideal story is the Doctor just travelling about. Now, the Five Doctors is an anniversary special itself, so it gets away with being this big, as does this book. And I'll admit, if you're going to tackle Time Lord Society, a book is the best way to do things, because, let's face it, Time Lord Society you really wouldn't have the budget for. Hasn't stopped them from trying, though. Having said all of this, the strongest parts of the book, to me, were the Doctor in a room, or with his companion, when he wasn't on Gallifrey. Those were the best parts, because they seemed more like the show, and, well, played to the Doctor's strength. Particularly when a Doctor goes to the Spire to see its inhabitants. I can't blame the book for this fact of showing more of the Time Lords, because towards the end of the 7th Doctor era, and the 7th Doctor era of books, they were doing that thing where they showed more of Time Lord Society, aka Longbarrow, so I can't fault the book. As it is, this is a high concept story. The descriptions are great for this. They don't get lost using abstract concepts to describe stuff. They feel very grounded and help build the Gallifrey of the book up to be this very advanced place that doesn't fully understand the thoughts of other races. They feel high and mighty. The downside to the writing is the amount of names you have to remember. I had to keep going back to remember who was who, and that's never a good sign in the book when you have to go back to remember a detail. You should always be moving forward with the flow. Characters. Okay, I'm gonna be honest, and it pains me to say, looking back after this book, I'm kind of disgusted that I started laughing at Strax. Hear me out. Strax is funny. I liked him. He was comedic, he was a breath of fresh air in Vastra's little gang, who I don't like anyway. But after reading Sontar, I began to feel a bit guilty. Through flashbacks, we see the exact moment the Sontarans became what we know them to be. One of Sontar's scientists comes up to him and says, if they're going to win this war, they're going to need to make these soldiers slightly dumber, more brutish, with only 3 fingers. I don't get why they included that, they just did. And be made quicker. In essence, not full Sontarans like he is. Sontar agrees, nods, then he goes back to his cabin and sobs. This is what the future of his race is. This is what his race are going to need to be to win and to survive. And it was such a moment that I closed the book and thought about how New Who handled it. At first, they did okay. They did okay. The Sontaran stratagem was awesome. It was them getting desperate and using different tactics. This was amazing and a good way of using them. And then when Moffat came, they were just comic relief. It made me sad that they can't be used well again. Chibnall, when you become showrunner, do something cool with Sontarans, please. Because it was amazing reading Sontar, who only survives because he's using clone bodies. It's his mind, but in clone bodies. Probably the closest to a perfect clone of him there is anymore. Strax, my buddy, I'm sorry, but you can no longer be funny to me. Anyway, on to the Luton. The Luton, he was there. He definitely existed. Apart from your typical diplomat personality who's been at war with a certain race for a long time, he didn't really have much going for it, except that he was a blob. Blobby! The Doctor himself is a mix of older incarnations. Enjoyable as always. I mentioned he has a companion. Well, it's a Time Lord companion, Lana. She's a former student of his, and she gets wrapped up in the murder investigation. She sees the Doctor as how all Time Lords should be. Lana is honestly an interesting companion. She's not just a copy of Romana. She's intelligent, but still new to the Time Lord way of life, so she still has that naivete that companions have. Lana's a brilliant balance of wide-eyed and fiercely smart. The book never forgets that she had to pass the academy. She and the Doctor have a few scenes at first, due to them getting wrapped up in separate things, but they work well together later on. Honestly, she's more like a co-worker than a companion. It's like Lana had a spin-off beforehand and this was the whole big crossover. Though there is that scene where she sleeps with the Doctor, so maybe she's a superior River Song. Savar, the crazy Time Lord I mentioned, is honestly amazing. He's like Time Lord Khan. The strangest thing is that he switches from insane to sane. The Time Lords made him sane again when they rescued him a couple years back, but he keeps switching between sane and insane, like I said, because of some unseen force. What does it mean? Does it have anything to do with plots? Is the sky blue? Yes, of course it's all tied together. Omega is always the best villain to have for an anniversary. He's big enough, he's powerful, he's larger than life, and he's a mystery even to the Time Lord mythos, due to being an old figure even by their standards. This is why I consider it to be an alternative Doctor timeline. He's met the Sontarans, he's met the Daleks, and he's met the Lutons, but he's never met Omega before. The Doctor does manage to get to Omega, who's been stuck in the black hole, becoming a god with the Doctor's wife. No, seriously, the Doctor's wife, upon her death, was pulled into the black hole by Omega and made to be his wife. Again. Because, as it turns out, the Doctor's wife used to be Omega's wife, and then she fell in love with him, and then she got pulled into the black hole by Omega and is back to being his wife, though no love between the two. This Omega is a lot more cunning.
Take it! Commands! You command me!
Yeah, sadly he doesn't do that. The way he gets back to the real world is by possessing the Doctor's body. When in the Doctor's body and back in Gallifrey, Savar, finally being sick of being turned back and forth between insane and sane by him, charges at Omega with a sword. That is awesome, but it goes about as well as you would expect. Shame, I like Savar. Omega wants to be a god in the real world as much as he was in the black hole. How did he get the Doctor to stay there? By letting him be with his wife. Seriously, this might be the most emotionally tied Doctor has ever been to a person because, well, it's his first wife. The Doctor becomes an opposite point to what Omega is, and this comes back to bite Omega hard, because when he actually does try and get the universes to collide, he becomes a god and then he doesn't. The way the Doctor manages to get him out of the situation is saying, now that you're a god, nothing matters. You can do everything, so you have no freedom. You are basically nothing. Nothing makes sense. There is no consequence to what you do. Everything is always the same. You are limited because you are unlimited. Omega says, fair enough, I'll blow up everything. Better to die a god than live as a mortal. The Doctor says that makes sense, and shakes his hand. And because they are two opposites of the same thing, they blow up together, and things turn back to normal. Okay, as normal as it can get with the Doctor. Oh, if you're wondering about the Sontaran Luton War, don't worry, the Doctor actually forgot about it himself. No, seriously, for the last third of the book, the Doctor completely forgets about that, and the two are left in the TARDIS, killing each other over and over again. Until they actually finally sit down and talk. I guess they got bored and said, you know what, there's nothing else to do, let's just try and end this war and talk peacefully. And they did. In this book, the Sontaran Luton War ends. The Doctor moves forward with his life. him and Lana sort of departing to do different things, and Omega is deaded. Overall, a lot of build up to Omega, a nice sense of grandeur for a 30th anniversary piece, and a fantastic alternate Doctor story, if you choose to see it that way, like I do. High concept Gallifrey stories, honestly, they can only be done in books, I think. You would never have the budget for it. So you have two options. Either don't show it, like the Time War should have been, Moffat, or book, where you can really play around with it. You have no budget to worry about. I recommend this to die-hard Whovians. Newcomers will be a bit lost with the references. There's a nice little jab at the movie, where the Doctor briefly forgets who he is and thinks he's half human, and that he has a father named Ulysses. It was a nice little nod to the movie and what the concepts for that were going to be. Newcomers, I just stick to the books that have been released recently. Hardcore fans, I definitely recommend this. This is a good book. Though, as I said, I cannot look at Sontarans the same way. This has been Reading Into, saying thank you for listening.